I composed a tier list of some of the most popular staple Yu-Gi-Oh cards in the game to give you the 411 on what's the best, all the way down to what's the worst. Of course, big dog, I hope that your day is going phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. Let's jump into this tier list. So the criteria for this tier list is pretty simple. I'm going to be ranking these powerful staple Yu-Gi-Oh cards based on how well they'll be able to perform against some of the most popular decks in the game. There are actually quite a few powerful strategies in Yu-Gi-Oh right now. You'd be surprised where some of these staple Yu-Gi-Oh cards will land and some of the advice that I'd have to give to you about them. Let's go ahead and start off with Alpha Master of Beasts. This card was actually a part of my text for my third place deck list that I had at my last tournament. I'm still going to put Alpha Master of the Beast as a situational Yu-Gi-Oh card. The reason why is because I used Alpha Master of the Beast for all of its properties, being able to disrupt my opponent but also returning itself into the hand. Not many Yu-Gi-Oh strategies can do that. A lot of times you're going to need the correct deck to be able to take full advantage of Alpha Master of the Beast, and that's why I think it's a situational staple Yu-Gi-Oh card. Next will be Anti-Spell Fragrance, a ridiculously powerful card inside of the side deck. I would say that if your deck fears some of the most powerful spell cards in the game, or maybe your deck doesn't play a ton of spell cards, Anti-Spell Fragrance could be a thing. When Cash Tira Cash Money was running around, Book of Eclipse was a premier Yu-Gi-Oh card that you must play inside of your deck. Nowadays, I would say at best it is a sideboard worthy Yu-Gi-Oh card. It still has amazing applications against decks like Pearly. It can actually be really good against the new Centurion strategy to prevent them from synchro summoning. Card can also allow you to be able to dodge some really important card effects that a lot of players are using right now. It's just not as versatile as it once was in the last format. And with the decline of Book of Eclipse, Book of Moon, oh no. Just flip the whole card face down. Right now though, Book of Moon has that feeling that it doesn't do enough in the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, which is why you're going to need to be able to play the correct deck that can take full advantage of this card for it to be a great card. The Bestial Monsters, The Bestial Monsters remind me of my ex-girlfriend. Sometimes you want her around, but you want her as a side piece. I mean, the card does what it does really well, but you really don't want to be caught outside with this being your main. Wait, am I still talking about Yu-Gi-Oh? There is an asterisk next to the Bestial Monsters. If your particular deck benefits from being able to summon these dragon monsters, like if you were playing a dragon Yu-Gi-Oh deck, then by all means play them inside of your main board, but for just about everybody else, the sideboard it goes. Called by the Grave. If you guys have checked my hand trap tier list, hand traps are actually really powerful right now. That means that Called by the Grave is finally a main board worthy Yu-Gi-Oh card again. It's really interesting that in the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG that Called by the Grave is a card that you sometimes play and don't play, but with monsters like Ash Blossom Effect Failure and Ghost Runner running around, this is a really solid card to be able to counter those without having to dump a huge investment inside of your deck like some other cards. Change Your Heart, Mrs. Take Your Bitch. I still think that Change Your Heart is a really good Yu-Gi-Oh card. Now, granted, it works really well in simplified situations where your opponent can't stop Change Your Heart, or maybe later on in the grind game, but this card is incredible, especially when we have monsters like SP Little Knight to be able to get rid of the opponent's card that we took. Plus, big dog, if you just so happen to be born in the 90s, baby, and you saw the show Change Your Heart, you be doing some devious things with your opponent's monsters too, if you know what I mean. 90s babies, we up. God, I feel old saying that. Somebody told me I was born in the 1900s and I was like, sheesh. You will actually be surprised where I put a card like Cosmic Cyclone. It's a card that is incredibly good against Centurion, being able to banish their trap cards before they can summon them to the side of the field. It's also really good at hitting other face-up spell cards that need to be on the field to be able to gain their effects. I would still put it in Staples Divorce Papers together though. Cosmic Cyclone on paper seems like one of the better Yu-Gi-Oh cards in the entire game. But the problem with Cosmic Cyclone is that it just simply does not do enough in this Yu-Gi-Oh format. It's incredibly perplexing because to me, Cosmic Cyclone is a good Yu-Gi-Oh card, and to be honest with you, I really want to put it right here. But between the numbers, statistics, and actual playing with this card, it never seems to do enough to actually matter in the game. Now, on the flip side, Crossout Designator has been proven to be really good, right? I mean, we're in a format where a lot of players are playing the exact same cards, so this is incredibly good at countering them. Yep, I'ma still put it and staple those divorce papers together. Okay, guys, you guys have already known me to be a Crossout Designator hater, so it's really no surprise that is there, but allow me to explain. The conundrum with Crossout Designator is that if you are playing a combo deck, more often than not, you don't care. Great combo decks have evolved to a point where they don't need protection cards like this to be able to fully pop off. And you guys might not like this, but if your deck needs Crossout Designator to thrive, it's probably a really bad Yu-Gi-Oh deck, let's be real. That's my bold take that's gonna get me crucified for today's video. Let me know down below in the comment section if you agree. Are you team Crossout Designator, or are you team just play better Yu-Gi-Oh? Darkhole was another crazy Yu-Gi-Oh card that I used in my third place deck list. It's actually ironic why I think Darkhole is just a little bit better than Raigeki, and the reasons is because now it's searchable, and B, it also gets rid of cards that your opponent might give you. The only problem is, a lot of times right now, players aren't giving you Yu-Gi-Oh cards like Nightmare Corrupt or Ibli. This card is useless for most Yu-Gi-Oh players that are not playing the secret sauce. I would say it's fairly situational at best. But I think this also goes to show that those situational cards can be really good in the correct deck if you build it properly. Don't be down on your luck if you see your favorite staple card a little low. It just means that you need to big brain your way to make it powerful. I would say that overall, Dark Ruler No More right now is a solid Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's pretty good. Now, I will say a lot of the combo Yu-Gi-Oh decks do have a way to be able to counter Dark Ruler No More, but overall, you gotta not only have the board that you want, you also have to be able to get into that counter card, which isn't as easy or as simple as a lot of people would say. Dimensional Barrier, my boys. Here comes another bold take. The top Yu-Gi-Oh decks in the game right now, Synchro Summon and Exceed Summon, but they also Link Summon, and they do all of them a ton. A lot of the best decks in the game are completely immune to Dimensional Barrier. They'll look at you crazy if you flip this on and continue to figure out another way to stomp you. I would put Dimensional Barrier and Situational. And the reason why is because it's still really good against certain Yu-Gi-Oh decks that are built on one specific summoning mechanic, but other times it's just not a great Yu-Gi-Oh card. So it really depends on the situation that you're in. Dino Wrestler Pengratops is a card that probably shouldn't be on the forbidden list anymore. I will admit it still is a very powerful side-worthy Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's actually really good at being able to break some of those face-up spell and trap cards that are a nuisance against a lot of players. If this card actually does come to 3, I think Centurion gets a lot worse. Enemy Controller is just like Change of Heart, except you can use it on your opponent's turn to be able to take their monsters and disrupt them, or that sneaky shift to defense actually does come up. I'm gonna put it as a good Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's a reason why this card comes as an ultimate rare and OTS. This is one of those old but gold, tried and true Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and in the correct deck, it's free. A lot of times using Enemy Controller to tribute a monster that was going to be negated by a card effect is like preem right there, because not only does your opponent miss the opportunity to stop your monster, you have an opportunity to take one of their monsters. It's really, really good right now. Okay, I may have lied when I said that I wasn't full of bold takes, because I have another one with Evenly Matched. I think Evenly Matched right now is staple those divorce papers together. The biggest problem with Evenly Matched is still that age-old problem. You gotta skip your battle phase. And then there's also something else you have to worry about in Yu-Gi-Oh right now. If your opponent actually has cards to be able to stop Evenly Matched, then you're skipping your battle phase for no reason. Evenly Matched is not in a great spot right now, though I do see a place for it if you are playing the correct Yu-Gi-Oh deck that can take advantage of it. Maybe I am slightly too harsh on Evenly Matched. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the situational. Stable those divorce papers may be a little too low. I really like how Forbidden Chalice is a good counter to SP Little Knight, but I think that's pretty much where this card stops. Unfortunately, you can't activate it from your hand on your opponent's turn, because other than that, it would be a really good Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's kind of crazy how stable those divorce papers are not really bad Yu-Gi-Oh cards. They're still fairly strong. I just think that there's a time and place for everything. Kind of like when you press the select button when you play Pokemon. Let me guess, they don't do that no more. I'm getting beside myself, just like how Forbidden Lance was 100% beside itself when it said it was a great Yu-Gi-Oh card. That was last format. Now, I'm gonna say do not play this card. Granted, there are still some good spell cards that Forbidden Lance can be able to swoosh around, but those cards are starting to become far and few between. If you that dog that played Forbidden Chalice, Forbidden Lance, and Forbidden Droplets in your deck, my boy, you deserve the win. The Drip Drop is still a really good Yu-Gi-Oh card. One thing that you have to do and keep in mind is giving up Yu-Gi-Oh cards, you better be giving up something that has a secondary effect. A lot of time in Yu-Gi-Oh, these cards have trade-offs that you're going to need to be able to take full advantage of. Sending cards from your field or hand to the graveyard could be a bad proposition if you're playing a certain deck, but if you're playing decks that need cards in the graveyard, it's a win-win. This is a must-play card for those particular strategies. Plus, you could always say that you're dripping in the sauce when you activate this card. That forbidden drip. It's really weird because boomers will be disappointed on how weak Harpy's Feather Duster is. It's just situational. A lot of times when you use the Duster, your opponent just activates those trap cards and you're like, huh, well then, they used them anyways. It's a card that just feels like it trades so negatively. Monsters like Kaijus and Santa Claus don't do enough right now. Unfortunately, Yu-Gi-Oh summons way too many monsters or boss monsters to the side of the field for one Kaiju to be able to interrupt. But I will say Lava Golem, if you don't need your normal summon, pretty decent side-worthy Yu-Gi-Oh card. At the end of the day, a lot of players in boards are some of the most generic cards like SP Little Knight and Baron de Fleur. Being able to get rid of both of those threats is a lot more valuable to just getting rid of one, because that doesn't do enough in Yu-Gi-Oh at this current second. I would consider Divine Carnate Kirakara inside of your deck, though it is a fairly situational Yu-Gi-Oh card. Your deck needs to be able to force your opponent to use their effects and also put you in a situation where your opponent using their effects doesn't necessarily phase you. It's a really tricky card to play inside of your deck when it comes to deck building, but it's ever so rewarding when you actually slam that Divine Carnate Kirakara on the field and look at your opponent with the ugly face. Ugh. I have compared Kashtira Fenrir to Cyber Dragon in 2006. Don't judge me, I'm old. It is a huge balancing monster from an archetype that summons itself to the side of the field and applies pressure. The only difference is that Kashtira Fenrir is a modern day Cyber Dragon. You can't get away with just summoning Cyber Dragon. I think that this card is an amazing game balancing Yu-Gi-Oh card. I'm going to put it in main board worthy, and ironically, I do think it's going to follow the exact same trajectory as Cyber Dragon. It'll be a popular card for a fairly long time. Lightning Storm has the drawbacks of not being able to use it when you have face-up cards, but it has the benefits that allows you to be able to destroy your attack position monsters. I think it's worth it to play a little bit over Harpy's Feather Duster. Bonus, you should probably play 2 Lightning Storm, 1 Harpy's Feather Duster if you're looking for back row removal cards. Really good against those back row heavy decks and still gives you the versatility to deal with monster threats. Raigeki is going to go ahead and go down here with Darkhole. I am going to say 100% situational. There aren't too many strategies that are completely weak to Raigeki. It is a card that pairs well with cards like Dark Ruler No More or Forbidden Droplet, but again, this is monster destruction, this is spell and trap destruction, this is both. The drawbacks of Lightning Storm are starting to become really apparent. There aren't any, and I see why it's semi-limited in the TCG. Now, Solemn Judgment is your go-to Yu-Gi-Oh card if you are a back row heavy deck, or if you fear some of these other cards that can be really good against you. Oftentimes when your opponent is using Forbidden Droplet, they are not sending a trap card. So if your opponent sends a huge investment in, you can Solemn Judgment it and look at them with the nasty face. It's also one of the few cards that can start Dark Ruler No More, Lightning Storm, Duster, Raigeki, Evenly Matched, D-Barrier, you name it. Half your life points normally is a good investment. It puts your opponent on, hey, do you got a second one or do we just go to game next? You will actually be really surprised where I put Solemn Strike. There are actually a ton of great Yu-Gi-Oh cards that are monster effects or summons from the extra deck that Solemn Strike can stop. I would put this in actually side-worthy. Solemn Strike is everything that Crossout Designator wants to be. Not only does it stop some of the most important hand traps in the entire game, it also can address some of those extra deck summons that are really powerful in Yu-Gi-Oh right now. I think Solemn Strike is a slept-on Yu-Gi-Oh card that players should be looking at. It can actually be the answer to a lot of the problems in the game. Super polymerization. Here's the deal with this card. Do you like where your opponent one card combos you into Oblivion with infinity negates? No? Well then, Super Polymerization is the card for you. Now, we know damn well Konami did not have the foresight to make Super Polymerization one of the most balanced cards in the game when it comes to going against combo decks, but they're rolling with it like they did by printing cards like Garuda Rings of Resonant Life and some other future cards that make Super Polymerization a healthy and fair card to be able to counter some of those infinite negate decks. This is every combo deck's weakness, and I think we love it right now. There are so many hand effects that want to activate on your opponent's turn. Triple Tactics Talent is a main worthy Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's incredibly good right now. This card is pretty much the epitome of solid game design. It punishes you if your opponent has a different line of thinking when it comes to deck building, but also rewards you for if your opponent wants to play all of the toxic glue eating cards, or if you just so happen to go second and they trying to set you up with some tinks. On the flip side, we thought that Triple Tactics Thrust was one of the best cards in the entire world. I would still say that it's a solid Yu-Gi-Oh card, just not as good as Triple Tactics Talent. The reason why I would say this is because normal spell and trap cards are overrated. Look, my guy, I want my spell and trap cards to be like my ex. They need to have that quick play symbol, they need to be fast, and they need to be everywhere. Playing on my turn, and my opponent's turn, and my cousin's turn is a must. Wait, you're talking about quick play spells, right? No, but in all seriousness, that lightning bolt symbol is incredibly important, and Triple Tactics Talent just can't get some of those cards, which is really unfortunate because searching Super Polymerization would have been really cool. Speaking of quick play spell cards, Twin Twisters, I would put it and staple those divorce papers together. Twin Twisters would be good against decks like Fluendaris and Centurion, but there's just better Yu-Gi-Oh cards to play, unfortunately. If you don't need your extra deck and you're having a little bit of trouble of breaking your opponent's boards, Ultimate Slayer is a good Yu-Gi-Oh card because of playing cards like Myrialic Aggregator or Garuda Wings of Resonant Life or even Elder Entity Intis to help you crack your opponent's board is so good. Though the big problem with Ultimate Slayer is that you can't use your extra deck, and I think that that's huge for a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh decks. It's definitely a situational card because of it. Monster effects are of the utmost importance, so if you are playing Skill Drain, you're in a really good place right now. It's an incredible Yu-Gi-Oh card, though I would advise not to if you want friends. Hey, yo, out of all of the floodgates, I think I'm going to make another bold statement. Skill Drain's actually the most fair. It has a lot of playthrough. There's so many ways to play around the card. You just have a skill issue with the card. Unfortunately, a lot of monster decks can play around Rivalry of the Warlords. It's not a terrible Yu-Gi-Oh card, but when you look at it in the broad spectrum of things, it's one of those staple those divorce papers together unless you're pairing it with the Leather Floodgate. Goes in Match fares a little bit stronger because while decks aren't necessarily type-based, they are attribute-based. This is a situational Yu-Gi-Oh card. I think Goes in Match can do well against a little bit more strategies, but at the same time, the card is fairly easy to get rid of, so you gotta watch out with these two cards. The Winged Dragon of Ra Sphere mode is either really, really good or really, really bad. I'm gonna say it's in that staple the divorce papers range. It can be incredibly good against combo decks, but that's it. And the Yu-Gi-Oh format is not made of just combo decks. Lava Golem actually gives you that nice little spot where it can counter the combo and also get the mid-range. This card, strictly combo. Now, if you guys were playing a particular Floodgate, there can be only one is probably the best. Of course, it has the same weaknesses as Goes in Rivalry, but it does single-handedly can shut down so many Yu-Gi-Oh decks. And Spellbound. Spellbound is actually incredibly good right now. I'm gonna say Spellbound's a good Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's amazing at being able to stop your opponent from doing things on your turn. There's literally 3 decks that do that right now. Centurion, Unchained, and Fluendaris. And you know how I feel about Fluendaris. Anytime I can shoot me a bird and make some Thanksgiving turkey, I have. And that is all that I have for my staples tier list post Valiant Smashers. I want you guys to let me know down below in the comment section, what exactly do you think about these particular rankings? And also, what other tier list that you would like to see in the future? I hope you guys are having an amazing day, and I'll be sure to catch you on the next video.